gentlemen, Michael Betrus with us tonight. He is the author of this wonderful book. I'm going to encourage that you go to Amazon tonight and order this book, or whatever you listen to this, in our TECN TV YouTube channel or at our BitChute channel. And as you're listening in record, that you go to Amazon tonight, today, whenever you're watching or listening. Go to COVID-19 Lockdowns on Trial. Michael Betrus is the author of that. This is a serious work, a profound work that is necessary for us to discuss in great detail tonight, because of its impact on not just the American people, but the world. Michael, what was your motivation for writing this book? Because listen, the John Hopkins University is the epic center for all this information. I can easily go to the Imperial College of Great Britain and they can tell me all this. And the WHO, the World Health Organization, come on now, they got to be absolutely accurate. Why did you write this book?
Right. So what happened for me was, initially we had two cruise ships that were quarantined. One was in February, one was in March. And there was a lot of interest around this, particularly the second one. It was kind of followed in like it was the Bronco chase as it was porting into Oakland after 4 days out at sea. It was. And I thought, boy, this might really be something the way it was covered. And then when it ported in, nothing really happened. And then about 10 days later, the Imperial College you just mentioned released their prediction that in a do-nothing scenario, we would lose 2.2 million Americans. And I thought, boy, that seems strange when you look at the cruise ships, and they had, over the two cruise ships with 7,400 people on board, they had 10 fatalities. And so I plugged in the data from the Imperial College model into the cruise ships, and we should have had 155 fatalities. We did it. We had 10. I thought, wow, something isn't adding up here. When we locked down and triggered 40 million people being unemployed, because I'd written a lot of books in the past, all career-oriented books published by McGraw-Hill, that spurred me on to do some more research. I was searching for some reality information. There really wasn't much out there. I do Google searches and turning on all the different cable news channels. And the first week of April, I decided I need to just write a book about this. And I finished it in April and tuned it up in May and June, and then we got it up in July. But it was really because there wasn't a lot of reality data getting out there, and the lockdown consequences have just been enormous. And you touched on a lot of the reasons why.
Now, Michael, there are people who believe government, and what your book is doing is challenging that belief. And I want you, if you could speak for a few moments on the difference between belief and faith. One you can muster on anything. The other one, you has to be exact in terms of its record. Am I correct in that regard?
Sure. So first off, I want to get this out. I'm not a COVID denier. COVID-19 is real. It's
yes.
It's and so the way I've really categorized this is that COVID-19 has demonstrated that it's definitely something that preys on the physically frail. The lockdowns really prey on the socially and economically frail. And so when you talk about sort of consequence, the thing that's got me more fired up the last 6 or 7 weeks has really been these school closings. So you've got, as just an example, you've got schools that are closed down and gone, and that are on remote learning. And so if you've got disadvantaged children, a lot of those, they don't have reliable internet connections. They may not have laptops. They may not have home disciplines. If you're an upper income or upper class family, you will sort of band-aid that. You will get extra tutoring and get resources. If you're at the lower end of that, you don't have those resources, and those kids are going to face a fall behind situation. In fact, I live in Texas, so Texas is a tilted conservative state for sure. We're still under a partial lockdown. So our biggest school in Dallas has 7,000 students in its high school. The kids having the option to go either face-to-face or they can go online. I talked to some students this in the last week or so. What I've learned is that the high overachieving students, they're there face-to-face. And the kids that are
Wow.
underachieving, let's say the lower half, they're opting to go online. And so what you're seeing is this, you're going to see this, a wider spread, a disparity of fall behind scenarios where the disadvantaged kids or the less motivated or less gifted kids, they're going to fall behind even more. And a great thing article came out today that I read where the superintendent of Alexandria's school system, they're under a lockdown or they're under a remote learning scenario. He pulled his kids out and he put them into a Catholic school so they could have face-to-face learning. Now, I'm all for that. I'm all for that individual doing that.
Yeah.
But why it doesn't everybody get that opportunity?
Now, the lockdowns, Michael, and let me play the devil's advocate here, are essential because what lockdowns do is keep healthy people from getting sick and spreading the virus to other people. And isn't that the modicum of public safety that we really want and public health that we really want? We don't want cases. We want people to be safe, right?
So a good your scenario, what you're saying could be true. If you think back, you probably saw the movie Outbreak, right, in the late 90s.
Yep.
If we had a virus like the movie Outbreak, what you're saying would be true. This virus isn't really like that. It's just not lethal to the majority of Americans that are maybe under 70 or don't have a specific 3 or 4 comorbidities. And so in that scenario, if you study this, and I didn't know a lot of this before, but I studied it. If you look at the Spanish flu, the Hong Kong flu, the Asian flu, those things sort of peter down on their own because they reached a herd immunity situation where a lot of healthy people got through it, got immunity, and they couldn't transmit it anymore. Anybody that thinks that is not our way out of this doesn't really understand the data. And so we keep trying to squeeze this thing so that the healthy people stay insulated. And what we're really doing is we're perpetuating the inevitable. And a lot of flack has gone to Sweden or states like, you're seeing a little bump in South Dakota, but that's really the only way you get through this is you sort of manage it. I mean, Scott Atlas on President Trump's team, he's done a very good job of representing that you need to insulate the elderly and the people that are at risk, and everybody else needs to go about it. So an example of that is my parents live in the city of Detroit, and Detroit was hard hit, and they're 89 years old. They live in the city. We haven't let them get out of their house. They're staying put. We've had people run groceries over to them. And at the same time, I've got a 20-year-old son who goes to college, and I've told him to live his life as freely as nothing was going on. That's really what we should all be doing. Eventually, you get enough people that won't be able to transmit this, and again, it's going to peter out. But COVID's going to be with us for years. It's this isn't something that's going to go away in 6 months or 12 months. You need to sort of navigate through it. And again, we're only talking about the health risk or how do we get it down to zero without the consequences on people. And again, the thing that's so strange is it's traditional Democrat constituents that are really getting squeezed the hardest. And so those are hard things for me to reconcile why these lockdowns are continuing.
I was told in government and in non-government, nonprofit situations that the public schools were essential in order to basically give 3 meals and a cot. At one time, last year, there were children in impoverished areas who were getting virtually all of their nutrition through the public school system. And as well, there were after-school programs in which they were able to stay and sleep until 6 or 7 o'clock when their parent, in some places 8, where their parent would come and pick them up. How great an impact has this been, first and foremost, on single mothers, and then secondly, on those children who needed those additional services?
Yeah, so it's devastating, right? And the New York Times ran a pretty good piece on this maybe a week ago or 10 days ago, or the New York Post, or it was actually the New Yorker ran a really good piece on it, and they kind of did a deep dive into a case study like that. But it's really devastating, and so you've got meals, you've got the nutrition aspect. Again, for my purposes, education has been an important trigger for me. And so you've got kids they're falling behind. They're going to lose this year. You really can't make up lost math and science knowledge. You have to it's tiered. 1 year builds on the next. And so it just feels like those things aren't being considered. And there's so many studies. I could bore you. I could send you an email, 10 pages long, just with links of studies of where kids are not transmitters of this, and there's no tracing of outbreaks or anything else associated with schools. Even in my area in Dallas, we just had a school closed down today because they had 19 cases in an elementary school. Well, 19 cases without a hospitalization or an illness is a big nothing.
Yeah.
And somehow that isn't getting understood. The cases doesn't matter, and the integrity of the cases has about a 50% margin of error. So you can throw the case numbers, that's a little out there. And the death numbers actually have a huge, we'll get into the death discussion in a little bit,
Exactly.
But the hospitalizations is what really matters. And so you've got people even on Twitter that were piling on Kristi Noem because they've had a spike in hospitalization. South Dakota right now is at 6.6% of their hospital capacity for COVID. That's good balance. You open up your state, you put your kids in school, and 6.6% of your hospital beds are with COVID patients. That's good leadership and balance. You've got New York, which is statistically 0% hospitalizations for COVID for 3 months, and those kids are not able to be in school right now. It is crazy.
Yeah, I want to ask you, because individuals like myself are always criticized for being racist and uncompassionate to minorities and others in the educational and economic systems of America. And the lockdowns, which, number one, if you could address whether Donald Trump ordered the lockdowns or whether the state governments ordered that. But secondly, what has been the impact on blacks and other minorities when it comes to the lockdown in comparison to the actual virus itself?
So the first part of your question is, Trump versus the state. So, it's easy fodder to pile on our president. What really happened was the federal government's responsibility was twofold. One, they had to shut down our basically our borders or leak opportunities, and so we did that. We the president, with caught a lot of flack for this, but shut down flights, halted flights to and from China and from Europe in the moment, and was highly criticized for that. The second thing the federal government's responsibility to do is make sure that resources are available. We had ample resources. We never really ran short anywhere. New York, you probably know the story there.
Yeah.
We had a ship there with a conversion. So I'd say the federal government, forget how Trump talks. From an action standpoint, the federal government did their role. They've got states that, and that's the republic we live in. The states had the opportunity to sort of tailor what they felt the appropriate response would be. And so you've got California locked down first, and Illinois and New York the next day. And some states opted not to. Every state that opted not to lock down happened to be a Republican-led state, but there's still Republican-led states today that are under a bit of a lockdown. Texas is, Ohio has had no activity, and they've got Republican leaders. So it's not just on party lines. The second question you asked is the effect on minorities. The biggest effect on minorities is that you're really squeezing service jobs, lower income jobs. For my purposes, I always reflect back in Detroit because that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
And so you got a situation in Detroit where you got certainly higher unemployment. But again, going back to the education side of this, you've got kids that aren't going to school right now. And so they're not getting the structure. The parents aren't getting a little bit of relief so they can go out and earn a living. So they've got to, sort of jimmy up daycare, and then the kids are falling behind. It's a mess. It's a mess. And then one of the things I researched and learned was that in Louisiana, in 50% of the school districts in Louisiana, half of those kids did not have a laptop or internet access. How are you possibly going to do this? And so that really preys on minority communities. I don't know any other way to say it. And so, again, the puzzling thing about this is that a lot of the lockdowns are led by liberal state leaders in more cases than not, and then their traditional constituents are the ones getting really screwed the most. And so it's hard for me to reconcile this.
But Michael, listen, we can spend our way out of this. it would be very easy. We could spend some education dollars. We can do summer school requirements and mandates, and the minority kids will eventually catch up with the more wealthy individuals who have all the resources to do well in and out of epidemics. Am I right about that? We can just
I know,
tax and spend our way.
I know you don't believe that. So no, you can't catch that up. And so there's a thing called deaths of despair that's happening, and as a result of the lockdowns, you're getting a couple things that are happening. One, things that it sounds like your next in reading his bio is going to talk about this, but you've got things like suicides and overdoses, things that are happening as a result of both depression and isolation and loss of income. So you've got those things going on. Then you've got untreated medical ailments that are
Yes.
skyrocketing right now. And so we're almost at a 50-50 right now of actual true COVID deaths. So out of the 210,000 or whatever COVID deaths, we're probably at about 130,000 real, genuine COVID-19 deaths. That's real. We probably have about almost that many what we're terming lockdown deaths, deaths associated with untreated medical ailments and deaths of despair. And that stuff doesn't get talked about, doesn't get dissected, and you get sort of crucified on Twitter and in the mainstream media if you talk about these issues. But they're real issues for a lot of people.
One quick thing about the deaths, and then I want you to tell everybody where they can get your book. You have an extreme amount of deaths that took place in New York because of what Andrew Cuomo did with the nursing homes. But as well, in terms of these deaths, the CDC in the 5 o'clock hour about 4 weeks ago released a statement that stated that 94% of those people that died from quote unquote COVID deaths, 94% of them did not die because of COVID, they died because of comorbidities. Only 6% of that 200,000 actually died from COVID. So actually, this particular virus has been less a threat than President Obama handled under H1N1 with 60 million cases and 14,000 deaths. Why are we so hung on this particular death issue, and why is that so debilitating in terms of getting out of these lockdowns?
Well, so I do want to address two of those points for just a second. One of them is when the CDC came out with that information, that wasn't new. That's actually in my book, and that I've got screenshots of it from the CDC's website and their reporting back in May. That information's been out there, but you can't really just say we've had 9,000 or 10,000 COVID-19 deaths when you look at our all-cause mortality or excess deaths of 250,000. That's not real. We really do have about 130,000, give or take. When you look at a COVID death with pneumonia, that's probably a real COVID death. That's the first part. The second part is I'm not a fan at all of what Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio have done in New York over the course of this summer. I just can't even believe what's happened in New York. But I do want to address one thing. In the moment of what was happening in March, I'm not sure that it would have been intuitive for Governor Cuomo to know as much about the nursing home. The people that I really hold culpable for that in the moment of what was happening in March, where the hell was like Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci and Dr. Redfield and the state health secretaries of these different places like Minnesota and Pennsylvania? Massachusetts had a lot, and obviously New York. It should have been intuitive to them, based on the cruise ship data and what was happening in Italy, that the elderly were by far going to be the most at risk. There should have been intuitive dot connecting by people in the medical, in the healthcare industry, that you don't put people that are positive or sick with COVID-19 into basically an incubator with a bunch of other people that would be most at risk. I really believe that they're even more culpable than, say, the governors. I'm not sure the governors, it would have been intuitive in the rush of those couple day moments when those policies were set.
Yeah.
But it's unforgivable that our healthcare leaders didn't connect those dots. It's virtual malpractice.
Should immunity be removed from the state? I mean, see, they always talk about removing immunity for police. Should government officials have their immunity removed and be tried both civilly and criminally regarding the management of this lockdown process?
Well, that's probably a trial for someone else to decide. But they should certainly be removed from the post, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if nothing else, there's gross incompetence. What their liability is, that's an argument for somebody else to weigh through. That's got more experience than me. But they certainly shouldn't be in those jobs. How in the world, like you take the health secretary for the state of Pennsylvania. They issued that order that COVID-19 patients should remove back to long-term care facilities, and she moved them out of a long-term care facility and put her in a hotel. While that was going on,
Yes.
you've got senators that were Republican senators under investigation for insider trading, and I was sort of laughing in the moment, thinking, you want to talk about insider trading? Insider trading is taking your mom out of a place and putting everybody else in it when they're at risk. That's insider trading to me, right?
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant statement. Michael, you have wrote a very powerful book, and it challenges the narrative that's been accepted by the world in terms of locking down healthy people and leaving frail people at risk. I would encourage everyone before they voted on November 3rd to read your book. Where can they get your book, and why should they make a decision to ask for the lockdowns to be removed?
So the first answer is you can get it on Amazon. Just search it by my name or the title. And then the second, why should you ask? The reason is the lockdowns are they're disproportionate response to the health risk. And so we locked down initially, the reason we locked down is because we were expecting a tenfold shortfall in capacity for hospitalizations. That never happened. It sure as hell isn't happening right now anywhere. And
Yeah.
so you can't just keep moving the goalposts like California is saying, well, we're going to look at cases. And that's what they're doing in New York. They're just looking at cases. Cases with people that aren't sick are actually a good thing. That's how you get your way out of this. And so it's just unfair to the people that are, these sort of people that don't have a voice. And they're the ones that are really victimized. And again, the people that are really small business owners, people that have retail stores and restaurants, and lower income people and these disadvantaged kids in schools, they're the ones that are paying for this, and it's tragic.
I want to say this. It's not you. You didn't write this in your book, but this is my basic commentary on this particular matter. Minority congressional, minority governmental, minority health leaders across the country have screwed black kids and Hispanic kids for at least. You can't pick up 2 educational years in the following year. It doesn't happen that way. You have literally destroyed at least 4 good years of education for that kid. That is going to be a long-term cost to not only that child, but to our nation. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Betrus with us tonight. Thank you so much for writing this book. And thank you for having it out before the election. COVID-19 lockdowns on trial. And would you tell the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, to open Texas, please? It's really an embarrassment.
I would. I sent him a copy of my book. So I sent him a copy, and I sent Governor DeSantis and Governor Kemp and Governor Nome a copy of my book. And they 3 of the 4 sent me a note back. And Chris, they did. Chris wrote me the nicest note. It was handwritten. The whole thing was handwritten. It was very sweet. And I mentioned her several times in my book. I got typed up notes from the other guys, and it was nice that they responded. And I'm trying to inch this along, right? You and me and a lot of people like us, we're all trying to do our little part. But eventually, the real problem here is that you've got a lot of people that are genuinely afraid. The data doesn't get contextualized, so they don't feel motivated to rise up and protest this or voice their opinions. And so if you've got fear, it's easy to put people under your thumb.
Yes,
and that's what's happening.
Thank you, Michael, for being with us tonight. And if we can get you back after the election, I greatly would appreciate it, because I just think, I think in my own opinion, and I'm not as brilliant as you or all the other Dr. Fauci's and everything, but I just think there's going to be an amazing miracle healing that takes place on November 4th, and COVID won't even make a difference to the political realm of governance anymore. It just won't make a difference.
Can I tell you can I tell you one other thing
Sure.
real quick?
Yes.
So I don't know if you heard this story, but about 4 weeks ago, the public health director for Los Angeles was caught on somebody recorded her in a closed door meeting in Los Angeles, and they were talking about school closings, and somebody said, "Well, when do you think we're going to open up?" Her reply was, "Well, I think we'll probably open up schools after the election." And hold on. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, did you know that the virus was going to go away after it votes?" I didn't know that, but I guess once it votes, it's gone. It's really tragic that this has gotten politicized with, again, our most vulnerable people that are paying for this as a result of lockdowns. It's tragic. But
Exactly.
thank you so much. This was a
Thank
great
you, Michael.
conversation. I
You're
appreciate
awesome.
your time.
I appreciate you greatly. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just vote, you can heal America and the whole world. COVID would go away. Just vote. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back with more of the best in urban conservative talk right after these messages. And thank you all so much for being in the chat roll tonight. All you need to do is go directly to TECN TV. You can sign in, get in that chat roll, ask your questions, and I will answer or ask those questions on your behalf.